Ladies and gentlemen, we're here after slogging, I think is the right word, through technical difficulties.
Yeah.
If this episode comes out, y'all,
It's a miracle.
we're just going to be happy.
Yep. That's why I look like I'm actually using a webcam that I just like kind of found on the ground over here because we're having our switchers weren't working, the new camera we bought's not working. I mean, I'm surprised this table hasn't broken in half at this point, but we're here. Episode 69 in the bag. You know, we made it past episode 56 somehow.
It's true. It's a miracle. Today is full of miracles. We are having a good time. So, Brad, outside of starting your morning with some extreme technical difficulties, how you doing today?
Hey, today I'm doing well. You know, another day. It's beautiful here. It is like beautiful. My favorite, like it smells and feels like fall today, which is my favorite time of the year personally.
Nice.
So like it's great. I can't wait. It's almost Labor Day weekend. You all listen to this now. You're started your Labor Day weekend already, and just happy to get out there. Have some friends, actually friends from Ohio that are coming down this weekend just to visit the area. They connected and actually listener of In the Bag. So shout out Cody. See you this weekend. I'm going to play some rounds with him and his wife, and that'll be very exciting. Hopefully get some rounds in with Jason and Elizabeth this weekend. And I'm just going to play. I haven't played a lot of disc golf since I've worked here. And this weekend, I'm playing some disc golf. I'm playing a lot of disc golf.
I love it.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here for disc golf. I'm back on the disc golf wagon. I like it again. Let's go.
Hey, that's what we like to hear. That's a happy recommendation. So, I mean, with all that said, when you're out there, you're playing your disc golf all weekend. Hopefully, in the fall weather continuing, hopefully it doesn't get that like heat spike back up. What are you gonna be wearing while you're out there?
Well, you can see right now for those watching, a little bit of Flippy. So I love, like, my favorite thing about Flippy, like they have great. Now, don't get me wrong, they have great performance. Like the new Soul Pro material, Robbie, you wear it all the time. You can attest. Like it's great. Even the comfort stuff that you're wearing right now, that's like half performance, half comfort. Great. I wear it around the house. I wear it out playing rounds. But my favorite thing recently is Aaron's been doing some really cool designs just from like a t-shirt perspective. If you belong to Club Flippy, you know what I'm talking about. It's free to join Club Flippy. You just sign up with your email, and he's been doing a monthly t-shirt, like a monthly like specific t-shirt. It comes out to Club Flippy members. You have like 20 days to order it, and then it's gone. I'm trying to convince Aaron to let the general public have access to that because I think he's doing some great work. So like last month was this one. It's like a little UFO abducting your disc. Like, hey, where'd my disc go? Well, the aliens took it, obviously. This month, spoilers. Sorry, Aaron. It's a very, very cool. Like the theme is noodle arm. So it's like a Flippy logo on the chest, just like this one. And on the back, there is like a very like Asian restaurant themed like noodle arm kind of graphic on the back. It's like a Chinese takeout with like it says like noodle arm on it. So mine's on the way. I got the shipping notification. So if you're not looking out for those, if you don't join Club Flippy, you're missing out on some awesome t-shirts because I don't know, Aaron kind of wants to like keep these for his supporters, his Club Flippy people. So all you gotta do is sign up with your email. Make sure you check it out. Flippy, Aaron, thank you for being such great sponsors. Thanks for putting out great gear, and thanks for keeping us comfortable on the course. And with all that said, Robbie, let's bring Josh in. I'm excited to talk about these discs. I'm like pumped about disc golf today. Let's talk about it.
Come on, let's do it. Welcome to the podcast, Josh. How are you doing today?
Really good. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm very excited.
Yeah,
come on.
We're excited too. I told it Robbie before. I mean, for all of the listeners here before the episode, like I'm like hyped on disc golf today. Like I'm like reinvigorated. I'm like ready to go. Despite the technical difficulties, nothing's going to get me down. And I like actually like loved the discs I threw. I mean, typically it goes back and forth. Like, you know, I'll find something I like or like it's a very good recommendation, but like personally, I may not put it in my bag. This episode, the one disc that I think you're going to love, hopefully you'll love. I'm like sitting here thinking like, what do I need to take out of my bag right now to put this in my bag? So it's probably going to make the bag. I'll be honest. So I'm very excited to walk through this episode. But before we do that, obviously, Leroy, please hit him with the questions.
Y'all, I'm telling you, if you are listening and you can't tell, Brad is giddy. Like
I'm
I've not
hyped
seen
today.
him this hyped in all the episodes we've done. It's incredible. I'm just grinning ear to ear over here. So, Josh, how long have you been playing disc golf, man?
Probably about 3 or 4 months now. So I'm pretty recently new, and I'm really enjoying
Wow.
it. Kind of really jumped on the scene and tried to play as much as I could in the last little while.
All right, can I interject? So this is interesting. I don't think we've had a lot. I keep just wanting to call you Leroy because I know you always have it on the screen, but I just today is just like stuck. Anyway, Robbie, I don't think we've had a lot of people, maybe maybe not even more than two, that have like just recently started. Most people are typically like COVID golfers, or maybe even a little before, like pre-COVID, or
Yeah.
people that started before and then got back into it during COVID. I don't know that we've really had many or any one that's only a couple months in. So like,
Yeah.
I guess my question to you, like, why now, Josh? What, like, did you just like see someone throwing a disc one day and like that looks fun, or like heard someone talking about it? How'd you get into it?
I had a friend, and I'd always try and get him to go golfing with me. And he was like, "No, I'm a disc golfer. I golf once a year, so I disc golf. You have to come try it." And he kept inviting me, but it just didn't work out. And then one day, it was pouring rain, and he's like, "Do you want to go play disc golf?" I was like, "I guess so. I can't play golf in the rain." So we went out, and I loved it. I had a great time. I was terrible, but it was tons of fun. And then went back out, bought a disc, and then just it was free, which was amazing. So I kept playing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Like, I don't know. It just was like, it's good to hear. And it'll be very interesting to hear like some of the next stats that Robbie's going to ask you, just because I think it'll give people like a true gauge of like, I mean, maybe the timeline of progression. And even like, this is interesting too, because you're a ball golfer. So like, does that help your progression? Does that hurt your progression? I'm just very curious to see like where you are.
Yeah. I tell my wife the beautiful part of like whenever she gets upset that I'm playing disc golf or whatever, I'm like, I could be a golfer. Trust me.
True.
And
It's expensive.
if I were a golfer, I literally could buy a Frisbee every time that I go play, and it would still be cheaper than me being a golfer. So respect to that. I could buy a time lapse, Brad, every time, and it would still be cheaper.
Good luck. There's only like 4 in the entire world. So just be careful with that.
What a time. So let's talk distance. We put you in a field, Josh, and we're like, hey, basket's going to be X amount of feet away from you. Not one time with the tailwind downhill, I threw it X far. How far out are we setting the basket, and you feel like you can consistently reach it with both with the backhand, and then how far are you reaching with the forehand?
I'm not sure if I'm the typical like 3 or 4 month old player, but I've got pretty good distance right now. I'm getting around like 325 on my backhand. I've always loved throwing things, so like baseball and golf, maybe that helps, but I'm getting pretty good distance right now. I've kind of started figuring out how to throw a bit more Annie and my flippy discs, so that really helps get a little bit the distance a little further. I've noticed in the last maybe month that it's actually, I've gained maybe like 50 feet, not yards. So that's been pretty good.
That's
and
awesome.
Then my forehand, probably it was going about 280, and I think I'm getting it up closer to 300 now, but I'm starting to throw it and it's flipping over a little too much, so I've got to figure that out a little more. But I'm getting decent distance, which is good.
Yeah, that's amazing. What position did you play in baseball?
I was a pitcher when I was a kid.
Okay, awesome.
So I have a weird forehand, I've been told. I don't know. It works for me.
Hey, that's the name of the game, is find what works for you. Thankfully, there is a lot of ways to get these things to fly. So awesome. So that is off the tee. Let's talk putting. We put you a basket. We put you 15 feet away from the basket. You make 10 putts from there, 10 putts from 25, and 10 putts from 40 feet. How many are you making at each station?
Putting's definitely not my strong suit. I haven't practiced nearly enough, but I'd say from 15, probably 7 or 8. If I'm feeling, if it's a good day, maybe a little more, but probably about 7. 25 feet, I'd probably make 3 or 4. I'm getting a little bit better at those, a little more practice, and then anything past that, probably 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just kind of tossing it up, feeling it out with 10 reps in a row. Yeah, that's okay. I love it. So our last question is, what would you say is the biggest strength of your game right now?
I'd say probably my distance right now because it's getting better each time. I'm more consistent. My up shots are pretty good. I'm more consistent with those as well, but I don't quite have the distances down. So if my drive's not really good, then I have to try and figure out which disc goes which distance. So
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. And like, I'm sure coming from the golf background of knowing, okay, it's a 9 iron in from here, or it's my 45, or it's just a pitching wedge, like all that kind of deal. Probably translates pretty naturally. And honestly, I'll tell you from an experience standpoint, learning your discs and what they do is so wild. I've not played golf long enough, so I think sometimes you have to get like your irons like retooled feels like the wrong word. But like, do irons lose their effectiveness over time when you use them?
I've had my iron set since I was in high school.
Okay.
They're like a beginner iron, so they still work. I don't play enough to really notice a difference in good irons, but I know you have to get the grooves redone every once in a while just so you can get some spin on the ball.
Okay. So yeah, so I was wondering on that aspect because I think that would probably be like the most relatable to a disc beating in over time. So yeah, because you're like, okay, I'm approaching with this Zone OS, and I've been using this Zone OS and hit every tree in the world, and now it's more like a Zone O, and so very a fascinating part of disc golf to me is truly that like how a disc moves so fluidly through your bag sometimes. So you have a very interesting bag here. Silas will pop it up on the screen. You don't have a lot of discs.
See?
There we go.
Dang. Okay, so you're rocking a Trooper. That was the next question. Was sometimes people come on and they have a smaller bag, and it's due to necessity. Some people have a smaller bag out of choice, and so I think looking at the Trooper, the beautiful part about the Trooper is that thing holds a bajillion discs.
Yeah, I don't have enough
you can make it work.
I had a piece of PVC in there just to hold them upright for a while.
Yeah. And especially if you're throwing multiple on a hole and you already have room in your bag,
they all just fall
that thing,
over.
it just gets floppy everywhere. So the Trooper is an incredible bag. Really do think that, yeah. So great starter bag. So looking at these, your bag immediately, when I'm looking through the applications, I'll give a little insight to listeners because some people are like, how'd you get on the show? And I guarantee you, Josh, there's someone whose heart is in a bad place. And when you said that you've been playing for 3 or 4 months and you're here on the show, this person who's listening and your heart's in a bad place, you're seen. I get you. But they're like, what the heck? I've been listening to this podcast longer than he's been playing disc golf and he's already on here. So I get a lot of bags that pop up and they have like 45 discs in their bag on the chart. And I'm like, I can't really suggest anything here because like you're already full. Like at best, we're going to weed this out. So when you open a chart and there's a lot of white space, instantly I'm curious. And you also have a couple discs that are very, very unique inside of your bag. And I'm excited to talk about those. But we're going to start with putters, mids, jump over the fairways because that's where our recommendation is. Talk about drivers for a second and then come back down. And I actually think we're going to be able to help in the driver department because I'd be willing to bet that problem you were talking about with your forehand, you're starting to see some turnover and things like that. Could be a combination of things regarding those drivers. So let's talk putters first. You're putting with Banger GTs.
Yep, jawbreakers.
Dude.
Nice.
Why the Banger?
I really like the thumb track. The thumb area, it just feels really secure. So when I was throwing the Challenger SS, that was the first putter I got, and it was just kind of a bit slippery, and it would I didn't feel comfortable with it. And then I found these at a used store, and there's 2 of them. And I was like, I got to 2 for practicing will be perfect. And I really like them. They fly nice and pretty straight, and they feel very comfortable and controllable in my hands.
Okay. Now, you said practicing. Do you have a practice basket at home already?
No.
Okay. How close is your local course?
I just moved, so it's about maybe 5-10 minutes away on the bike. So pretty close.
Good.
Awesome.
Hey, fun fact for listeners: I only have 2 aces. One of them is with an Envy. One of them is with a Banger GT.
Dude, the Banger is. I have met lots of people who putt with Banger GTs. Like I'm shocked at how many people putt with Banger GTs because that groove track feels really good on the top. I'm always curious, like how it feels on the bottom side, like because it still has like a little bit of rigidity on the bottom because of the groove track. So,
never thought about that.
Like your fingers grabbing on the bottom.
My finger kind of sits past where the groove track is.
Okay.
I didn't notice that it was there. But the little bead where your pointer finger sits, that's quite large and nice as well.
Yeah, that is, you've walked into a very passionate debate of bead versus beadless putters. People will go to die on those hills. My older brother, who got me into disc golf, until I switched to beaded putters, used to make fun of me every time we played together. And he would even comment on some of my videos if I said a bad thing about beaded putters. So there are the beaded and the beadless. Brad's a beadless guy on his putting putters.
Yeah.
So, and I'm with you. The bigger the bead, the better, Josh. So we kindred spirits here. Now, putting with those, you have the Chally SS in there. So has it transitioned? Now you're not putting with it, more of the throwing putter.
Yeah, in case there's any trees in the way. That's pretty much what it's for.
Okay. So what? Yeah, I was saying, what shots are you throwing it on? Like trying to get out of it.
I've been really trying to throw it on like straight approach shots, but I don't know. I always seem to grip lock it a little too far and throw it to the right. So I'm still trying to figure this one out for throwing it with like a more of a power grip. If I put too much power on it, seems to go a little awry. It's good for just a nice fan grip toss up, but I like putting power into it.
The biggest thing that, like, I think even in recent history for me with like my game, it's just really helped, like just seeing like repetitively that I don't have to like throw like a putter so hard to get it to go far. You know what I mean? Like trusting the glide of a putter, trusting like what it's supposed to do. So I think some of that's just with time and throwing a bunch of shots, but I think just like trusting that your putter is going to go as far as you think it is. The smoother, the better. The more spin you get on it versus the more power you chuck it with, the better, because you just don't need to have that much rotation to get it to fly farther. So for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. And that's, I think that maybe adding a second putter, like I think we're targeting, if there's 3 initial areas I would target, I think that you have the initial target. Honestly, we could probably suggest something in every category, but we've tested inside. But I think just a nice neutral-ish throwing putter like a Sensei could work really well in your bag, just because the Chally SS of it, obviously, if you've putted with it as well, is going to beat it in even faster because by definition, it's hitting something every time that you throw it. And so that is definitely going to make it that more and it's already more understable. Whereas the Sensei is going to have like a little bit of hook up to it, fade, so you can get that like glidey throw without having to turn it over or anything like that. The inner core, another great suggestion there. Super glidey putter. But let's move over to the Zone OS. So when you got into the sport, the Zone OS like had probably just come out.
Yeah,
like that feel like a very new disc.
Maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and it's probably become one of my favorite discs.
Okay, what's it do for you?
Pretty much most of my up shots, I really like to throw it on a forehand flex shot. And I've started throwing it as a bit of a roller too if I get in the bushes. It's been really good for that, which is surprising. It's got that nice heavy feel to it and a nice wide rim. And I like that I can really throw it hard and it doesn't go that far.
Okay.
Which is good. So I like to throw things as hard as I can. And this is a disc that seems to really handle that.
I love it. What plastic is it in?
I think it's Big Z. It's crystal. Yeah, Big Z.
Or I think it's just Z.
Regular Z.
Yeah, Z. I always forget because I'm with you when I look and I'm like, Big Z. There is a very large Z on this. But
I didn't know there was a regular Z. I've only ever heard someone say Big Z. So.
Yeah. Big Z usually is not opaque, or is opaque. I always get confused what's opaque and not opaque, to be honest with you.
You can't see through Big Z.
Yeah, you cannot see through Big Z. Yeah, translucent. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, so that's what typical Z is. And then, yeah, Big Z. And you'll typically, they do like different artwork. So it'll typically be like I don't know, like the Athena has like an actual like drawing of Athena, and the Vulture has like an actual Vulture on it. That's typically their theme they go with when they do a Big Z, unless it's a special run. Just a tip for you new folks out there. I know there's more than just Josh here.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that makes a ton of sense. Honestly, if you're liking that, another approach disc that I'll tell you could replace the Chally SS if you like throwing full power is the Berg.
Yeah, I tried that one out and it was fun. I do like that.
Yeah, Berg is. I mean, I am on a hit list somewhere inside of the Berg Colt community. Me and the guys at Swanky, because we openly have said negative things about the Berg on the internet, and
I can understand why.
Yeah, I had a dead pig show up on my front door a couple of weeks ago, and it just said "From Berg Lovers," and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on, guys? This is a little tough. Can't wait to find what's in my bed one day." Mobsters after me.
Yeah.
Now,
Bergsters.
Let's talk. The rest of the mids. So, you got a Rock 3 and a Buzz. Let's talk about those two first before we get to the really cool disc that's chilling in there.
The Rock 3 is a fun one. The last round I played before I moved, my buddy threw his disc what we thought was in the river. So he spent an hour looking for it, and I found a bunch of discs, and a bunch of them had names on them, so I returned them. And the Rock 3 was the one that I kept, didn't have a name on it or anything, and I haven't thrown it. So it might be waterlogged. It could be. It's pretty beat in, so we'll see how that goes.
Okay, so what's the Buzz do for you?
The Buzz is a bit understable. It's pretty beat in. It's a jawbreaker plastic as well. I bought it used when I bought the Banger GTs. I like the decal on it, and it goes pretty straight. If I throw it on a bit of Hyzer, it kind of flips up nice and goes straight. If I throw it flat, it goes a bit to the right, which is nice, because most of my other ones are pretty stable. So this guy kind of does go straight and a bit right, which is nice.
That's awesome. So
can you show that disc? Can I see that disc?
You like the Okay.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
I cannot tell you the last time that I saw a jawbreaker Buzz.
Yeah. Me neither. I was just like, that's why I wanted to see it.
The only one I've ever had. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a beautiful disc, and I mean, jawbreaker plastic, guys. It's so good, and I don't know why more people don't like. As someone whose best disc in his bag is a base plastic disc, Jawbreaker feels on the same level as R Pro in terms of like it is base plastic, but it's a durable base plastic. So definitely a beautiful Frisbee there. And I think if I were to say like, oh man, the mid-range suggestion would be something on the very understable side, just so you had more flip. But that's when I thought that the Buzz was going to be a regular Buzz. If it's in Jawbreaker, I honestly don't even think you need to do that, because I think the Rock 3 and the Buzz are going to complement each other pretty well. And if you don't like how the Rock 3 feels, you can just get a premium plastic Buzz.
Yep.
And it will fill that slot. So, because the premium plastic Buzz, while it claims to be incredibly straight, for most people, the Buzz starts off like straight to overstable. So it's going to have that finish every time. But in that slot right now, you have a disc that most of the internet has heard of and they don't throw. You got the Interceptor.
Interceptor. It's a fun one. It was one of the first discs I bought. I didn't really know anything about discs at the time, and I was looking it up, and I found the Gecko and the Interceptor, and I really liked that they were so floppy, and I thought that would be fun to try, so I bought them both, and I really like the Interceptor. It's a great one for any sort of approach shot where the basket's in a bit of a dangerous position, because it just hits and it sticks. It doesn't roll at all, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I think the weirdest part for me about any of those like elevation discs that, like the mids and the drivers is like, you feel it and you're like, there's no way this thing is going to fly. And then you throw it, like the Binks, for example. I'm like, the Binks is like pretty overstable. Like how does that make sense? So it's very interesting, like throwing them and seeing them behave like a disc you're like typically used to, but they feel so different.
Yeah, I'm gonna burn bridges with Elevation future partnerships personally. But I like, and I got an Interceptor off the rip. Like I think I got mine before they were like really out to the public. I'm not, that timeline's kind of blurred. But I agree. I have a koi that sits downstairs. And we have a course that is nothing but elevation change left and right. It's our Independence, Brad. And that course, the koi literally goes in my bag for that course for the exact reason of like, oh, okay, little bit of a longer putt. It's on a hill. I'm just going to chuck the koi up there. If it goes in, fantastic. If it doesn't, it's going to sit right next to the basket. So I think that's beautiful. My struggle is, and I'm now seeing someone that bags 2 elevation discs. Do you find that it's, no matter how good you throw the disc, bouncing between like a firm frisbee to the floppy frisbee, does that ever mess with you on like release points and things like that? Or just because you've used it enough, does it become a little more natural and subconscious?
I think because it was pretty much my first disc, it's kind of what I started with. I never really missed releases on release points, but I've noticed that as I get a little bit better, I have stopped throwing it on so much Hyzer, and so I had to really change where I was releasing, where I was aiming, because I was throwing these big sweeping Hyzers in and just kind of letting it flop in, but now I've started throwing it more straight at the basket, and that seems to work a lot better. So I don't know if it's me misreleasing it or just me changing my game a little bit, but I've always felt pretty comfortable throwing it. It's got a good feel. It's very grippy, unless it gets dusty. So yeah, I really like it. It's fun.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fascinating. And so you said the Interceptor you're using for like approaches. What's about the like longest length that you're seeing around like 200 feet? Where does the Interceptor range stop?
I'd probably say 150 or something.
Okay.
Most of the course I was playing at, most of the dangerous baskets would be like kind of wooded, so I wouldn't necessarily throw it too far in the wooded because it hits and just drops, and you don't really get any sort of play off trees or anything. And I'm not that accurate, so I kind of need every help I can get. So yeah, about 150. I'll try and throw it about that. If there was an island hole, I would throw it on, and it would go maybe about 200 if it wasn't windy. It doesn't do so well in the wind either.
Yeah,
that makes more sense.
I would imagine there are sails are designed to catch the wind, and it's very reminiscent of a sail in terms of the floppiness. So, okay, so let's jump over fairways for a second.
Sure.
Although and we'll touch back on the Gecko. Let's talk distance drivers real fast. You've got the Grim X from Castaplast and the Ballista Pro. What are those doing for you?
The Ballista Pro is kind of my long distance. I can forehand it and backhand it. It's a little more overstable still. It's probably my longest distance one, but the Grim X has become a little bit more flippy for me. And so if I get a hold of it, it does go almost as far as the Ballista Pro. But I find it's a little bit harder to forehand right now because when I put in my full power, it starts to flip over. And I haven't quite figured out the release points on it yet. But it's very comfortable and easy to throw backhand. The plastic's really nice and grippy, which I really like. They both kind of feel very similar, which is good. I got the Ballista Pro because my buddy who introduced me, that was what he threw, and I liked it. So I saw a used one and picked it up.
Come on. So the Ballista, when you're forehanding the Ballista, you're not having an issue with turning the Ballista over? It's just the Grim?
Not yet. I'm worried once I beat it in a little more, it'll start happening, but for now, it's good.
Okay.
I've hit a few trees with it, so it'll happen in time.
As it does. Especially distance drivers, because you're not hitting trees softly with a distance driver.
True.
Awesome. Okay, so Brad, if what did, like, if you were hearing, okay, I'm turning over the Grim X, I'm starting to see some turn out of it. What direction would you take the distance driver recommendation?
Get rid of both of them. That's the first thing I would say. No, I think just based on, and did you buy both of these used, or did you buy okay. So that becomes a little tricky, especially when you're starting out new, because I think like sometimes it tricks you a little bit on like a Ballista Pro should just be like the most of a newer player with a Ballista Pro should be the most overstable thing on the planet for you. Like you shouldn't even be able to throw it on Annie and it not come back to the left for you on a right hand backhand. So I think that's a little tricky. If you're turning it over, I'm going to say that you're probably not like engaging your lower body a whole lot. You're like really using your upper body and your arms, and you're kind of have an Annie release, I'm guessing, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robbie, neither one of those should really be flippy at all. Even in their most beat in state, they shouldn't have that much flip, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. The Ballista Pro, ballistas are not the beefcakes that the numbers try to show. And it's hard to confuse because the Ballista also exists, and the Ballista is flippier. But I would say the tricky part about the Ballista Pro is that the turn and fade on it, not what you would imagine, but also I do think that it is actually a 14 speed. Like it is a very fast disc. So the rim being so large, it takes a lot of oomph to get it going.
Yeah. So I like how large the rim is. It really feels nicely when you're trying to forehand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like, if you're comfortable with a bigger rim like that, I think there's like definitely some other options for you that are maybe a little bit more like neutral, like off the shelf, that you could probably get some distance on. And I mean, I don't know, this conversation is a little tricky for me, Robbie, honestly, just because like for a player that's only been in it for a few months, like I would just completely have you shy away from those in every way, both of those discs. But again, if they work for you, that's fine, and you're comfortable with them, that's fine. I would just be curious, like, how's your Raptor fly compared to the Grim X compared to the Ballista Pro?
It's much more stable it's probably the most stable disc I have. It always goes to the left.
Okay. Distance wise, are you seeing a noticeable decrease in distance from your Raptor to like your Grim?
I definitely think so. I get a lot more turn to the left. The other ones go a lot more straight and then fade at the end. The Raptor kind of just slowly turns left the entire time, which is good. I like it for certain shots where that's needed, or if I throw it a bit on Annie, it'll kind of fight out of it, but it always goes left.
Okay, interesting. I'd be curious what you could do with a Wraith. Like that would be like, I'd be very interested to see, like, because it's 11 speed, correct?
Yep.
So it has a little bit of turn, but does have some stability, especially if you find one that with like a little higher weight. I'd just be really curious to see what a new Wraith would fly like for you versus a Ballista Pro or a Grim X that you bought used. Again, I think this is also why like newer players, and I'm not saying about this to you, Josh, but just newer players in general. And I was in this ballpark of, you see flight numbers, you see what they're supposed to do, and then like maybe they don't fly that way off the shelf, and then also you get them out of the used bin and they also don't exactly fly like that. So then you get used to like a Grim X that's used flying that's flippy when it's probably not actually flippy if you like get off the shelf. So I think there's a lot of like gray area in that, Robbie. I don't know where you stand, but that's hard for me because I would definitely say stay away from those. And even if you like a bigger rim as a newer player, I would say try an Era, try a Wraith, try like some of those like 10, 11 speeds and see where you are with them before you jump up in like the 14 speed category.
Yeah. I think you could take it, two directions of, I think if the used Grim X's or the used Ballista Pro are turning for you, you can say, okay, cool, what would a stock one look like? And you can see the difference there. I like the Wraith suggestion. I like the Wraith. I like the Grace as another option for you. Staying inside the trilogy lineup. But the The tricky part on both of those is they will have more turn naturally than either the Grim X or the Ballista does. So it will isolate that problem really fast for you on if you're wristing it and turning it over. But they should also require less power to get those distances, which is very, very helpful. I think if I were making the step, I would play a game of extremes rather than going to the Wraith, which will be just like, I would say, one step down from there. I might jump 2 steps and go to like a turn or a Thrasher or something like that. That's going to be a lot flippier. And I think could give you, if you're already testing the flip up line on your Buzz, and I'm going to guess when we get to the Sphinx here in a second, that it's also one of those like Hyzer flip options that you're seeing. The turn or the Thrasher or something like that could be a much longer version of that. So could really open up some options for you. Because if you're getting 320 with a Ballista Pro, putting something a little flippier in there could be super, super helpful on just backhand distance alone, much less, okay, I'm stuck in the woods. I've thrown an inaccurate shot. Super easy flip up on the forehand. So I think those would be the suggestions I would go there. But let's talk about the Sphinx. Woo! Sphinx got me in the nose. What does the Sphinx do for you?
Kind of one of my more fun discs. When I got it, it felt really overstable, but I bought it for my wife because it was pink and I was hoping she'd come play with me. But, and I wanted something a little flippier. And as I beat it a little bit, it became a lot flippier than I thought it would. And it was one of my longer flying discs for a while until I kind of figured out the Grim and the Ballista Pro a bit more. And now I really have to throw it on a lot of Hyzer, and it flips up and turns right and then comes back. So it's a really good flippy disc, and I enjoy throwing it, but it is hard to get that right release point, that release angle. But it goes a long way, and it's a lot of fun. I blend plastic.
Yeah. So as someone, to go back to a comment you made earlier of, I like to throw everything full power. Do you find it that touch of throwing something that is a little flippier to be frustrating? Is it like just not something you're comfortable with? What's the vibe on those? Because if you try to throw obviously a super flippy disc full power, you get the like the dive bomber kind of effect.
Yeah, I really do enjoy throwing full power, but I throw it on really high Hyzer, and it'll kind of flip up. And so trying to find that line is fun, but I usually throw it on holes where I have lots of room to make mistakes. And I tend to always throw 2 discs off the tee when I'm throwing it. And I throw like an Anheuser like overstable disc, and then this one to try and practice throwing 2 opposite shots back to back, just to try and get comfortable with it. So I'm getting more comfortable, and I really do like throwing it. It's fun. But sometimes if I release it too flat, it's just, I have to go 2 holes over to find it. And that's a bit frustrating. But it's the one I'm most in the woods for, or the bushes. But it's also one of the ones where I have the best shots with.
Yeah. I'm sure like a long straight tunnel shot in the like 270 range, getting that thing, learning to get that thing to stand up and ride straight is going to be a savior, as opposed to like, all right, I got to rip this Ballista Pro like on the perfect amount of angle to where she doesn't fade out. And that's dicey.
Definitely good for that. I also like throwing it if there's kind of an obstacle where you have to go around to the right, and just throwing it way out there, and it comes back and then fights out a little bit at the end. So
that turnover shot is one of the most beautiful shots to throw and feel you've thrown in the game.
Yeah.
Especially for lots of you who, like, if you're listening and you're a new player and most things just, if you're a right-handed player, go left for you all the time. When you finally get a disc that you can controllably go to the right, it's money. Okay, so the Gecko, does it just serve the role of a longer interceptor, or does it kind of fit somewhere different?
I'm going to be honest here. The Gecko kind of serves the role of holding my discs up. I don't throw it very often at all, but it stays in the bag because I have lots of room. I
That's
do
fair.
throw it on some like tunnel shots. I find it stays pretty straight and then fades a bit at the end. But it feels very sharp in my hands, and so I find it hard to feel comfortable with. And sometimes I grip lock it and throw it to the right. I think it's just the sharpness of it that's kind of got me not wanting to throw it as much. I'll trust my other discs over it.
Okay.
Yeah. And it feels a bit weird on a forehand because of the floppiness. Your fingers kind of like push into it.
Yeah.
So
I cannot imagine forehanding one of their discs. That would be a rough time personally.
Yeah.
But I mean, for a backhand, like you were talking about those spike Hyzers with a backhand, incredible for that. Okay, well, we had Brad try 2 discs in the fairway category, and I think that seeing that Sphinx is flippier than even you would imagine, and then the Raptor being the most overstable disc in your bag, you can imagine we think there could be a bit of a chasm between these two frisbees you got in the bag. So, once again, Brad doesn't see the bags until right before. So is it making sense why we went where we did, Brad?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Seeing the bag initially, I was like, oh, this definitely makes sense. But then hearing about your bag, it makes even more sense to me. So I think I'm confident that I could send you either one of these discs without you even seeing them or me talking about them. And you'd be like, I get it. I love it. It's one of these are going in the bag. Like I'm just that confident. Maybe it's just today. Maybe just how I'm feeling today. But I really like both the discs, and they both like Robbie said, there is a chasm right there. And I think Robbie can attest because I said this before I even saw your bag on this episode. I think that how I felt about these discs are going to be very good for I think what you're kind of saying to us that you need without saying you need it. So I'm excited to tell you about them. So I threw the Servo here from MVP, and then I threw the DGA Squall. So those are the 2 I took out. I tried them just before Robbie starts asking me some questions. Hand feels important to me too as well, Josh. So just in the hand, they both feel fine. They both feel good. I think the main difference is I like to kind of cheat when I have a kind of that slower fairway. I like it to feel more like a driver, less like a mid-range. And I will say the Servo feels more like a driver. The Squall feels more like a mid-range. It's just a little thicker. So it's just, they're both smooth. They both feel comfortable in your hand. It just depends which feel you're more comfortable with.
Okay. So first off, Josh, have you thrown any gyro before we dive further into this?
Just once or twice. Someone else lent me the disc. I threw it. Yeah.
Okay.
I like it. Feels good. My next disc I was thinking about buying was the Uplink because you guys were recommending that. And
heck yeah,
that was next on my list.
We are big Uplink fans over
Pro
here.
Uplink.
So, okay. Well, Brad, you take these out. You got the hand feel. What was initial thoughts after your first couple throws?
My initial thought number 1 was wow, I can get the Hyzer flips so easy, and they go really far. So that's great because the Servo is a 6.5 speed, 6.5, and the Squall is a 6. They both, because I've changed my release. I have a baby Hyzer now, so these easily would flip up to flat and just fly, and they would carry. And I could throw them both fairly, I would say easy, 75% power, and they would flip up, which is something I'm really trying to do, is find discs I can control and hit the line and still do what I want them to do versus having to throw 95% power to get them to flip up. So it was nice finding 2 discs that both did that, which gives me some hope that I can do it with more discs, which is awesome. The easy flip up was great. I will say the glide really was shown to me from the Servo to the Squall. Servo has a 5 glide, Squall has a 4. I would say glide's always that area where I'm I think it's just made up and it doesn't really, no one really knows what that means. But I would say these are pretty accurate. If I just compare them both together, I was getting a little more airtime out of the Servo and getting a little more distance, just a touch, nothing, maybe 20 feet, 30 feet at times, but it definitely was noticeable on the glide as far as how long they want to stay up in the air. The squall's a -1-1, the servo's a -1-2. And again, I will say that's probably pretty accurate because although they both flip up and ride straight for a while, I did see that little bit more stability with the servo. I also felt a little later when I started giving them a little more power and like testing some ante on them. You did see that little bit of stability like creep in on a few different shots. Maybe not like a straight. I'm just trying to hyzer flip this straight, and like the finish wasn't like super noticeable. When you throw other angles and other shots, I will say you did notice that little bit of extra stability.
Okay. So that's flip up. We're seeing that, like the glide, pure anhyzers. When you started just crushing some pure anhyzers, what was the vibe there?
I mean, they're not going to like burn over, but like you had to be really careful. You could burn them over pretty easy. Like I said, the servo, like if I gave it like a little anti encouragement, it would turn, but it would check up at the end. Whereas like the squall would, but it just kind of like, I wouldn't say that was like consistent. You know what I mean? Like I could, and just really like the angle was like a little touchy on if I wanted it to go anti, but they will both turn if you give them a little encouragement. Like that's nice. Even the servo that has a little more stability will turn. So that's cool. Like knowing again, hey, I can do a controlled anti shot. I don't have to like extra encourage this over. But if I give it a little bit, and again, I think it would be like playing around with them and finding the like angle, like a consistent angle for both of them. But it was nice knowing that they would turn, and especially the servo would turn and not like burn over. It actually would check up at the end. The squall would if I threw it correctly.
Okay. Now, and before we started recording, Brad, you were telling me there was a shot you discovered that you could throw at these discs that was something you'd been struggling to find in the past. So we're all about trying to equip our listeners not only with like bag suggestions, but hey, here is maybe you've been trying this shot and it's not been working out for you. What shot did you find you could throw with this?
Yeah, so I was at my home course and I was just like throwing in different angles, and my wife and I were out in the yard, and I just was like just chucking them in the field, like just seeing at this point how far I could throw them, and like kind of messing with the power. So I ended up like kind of off the fairway a little bit, and I had another holes basket. Kind of just picture I'm here. And then there's like maybe like a 30-foot tree between me and then like the basket is on the opposite side of me. And I want to throw like this big, like a horseshoe shaped shot, right? Typically in the past, what I would try to do is like, oh, well, if I'm going to have something come like wrap around a tree in a horseshoe shape, I need something very overstable to do that. And I need a little faster because I'm going to chuck it as hard as I can. And hopefully that stability just like kicks over and comes back. Well, what I typically would do was I'd pick like a vulture, or I'd pick something like very like overstable, and I would throw it, and I throw it straight into the tree because it automatically starts fading, like just basically right out of my hand. For those of you who watch the Jason versus Brad bag draft video on Robbie's channel, you will see on hole one, I try to take a Raptor and do this exact shot and throw it straight into a tree because I don't account for like the overstability, and then it just never ends up working. What was cool about both of these discs, and I could throw this shot with both of them, is number one, it was a slower disc, so I could get a lot more distance and like rotation on it. Number two, I could afford throwing it nose up because I'm able to throw this disc appropriately. And what was cool is it would still hyzer flip and flip up. I could get the distance, and then when it started slowing down and then where it was nose up, it would catch the extra stability and do that horseshoe shape and finish around the tree. So it was like, wow, okay. And I did this several times just to make sure it wasn't an accident. And it was cool, like just realizing, hey, I actually need to throw like something a little flippy with some stability to it to do that shot versus something very overstable. I'll probably have a higher success rate. So I really like both of them on that angle for sure. And again, I think just the servo did like a little bit. I was more comfortable with like the flip up and like that little bit of extra distance helped with the confidence to get around that tree. So yeah, for whatever it's worth, that's what I learned with my arm that I have to throw that shot. Like I can't throw like a tilt around something like some of the pros can and ace the hole, or throw in. But yeah, it was kind of interesting to experiment with like this like flippier disc and the nose angle to get around the tree versus something overstable.
Okay. So all in all, if you were like, all right, Josh, here's what I'm recommending, which one are you going with?
I gotta say servo. It's funny. I was hyped on this disc in the beginning of the episode because like I think the servo is like what I want like a C line FD to be, because my FDs great, they have flip up, they even have like a little turn to them, they may finish a little like right for me, or just like very dead straight, and I have two S lines that do that. But if I need some extra stability, I always jump over for the same type of shot, I'll jump to the C line FD. But the thing that I always like am disappointed with is I can't get the flip up like I can my S line FDs, and it tends to not go as far. But I do get the stability that I want. So I end up sacrificing stability for like control again, because I feel like I have to throw it harder, and I sacrifice a little of that flip up that I want for more of like a straight shot. So what's cool about the servo, and the reason I want to recommend it to you, is like I feel like it's like a hybrid of those two shots in one package that is really helpful. It's a controlled Hyzer flip straight shot that has some stability to it that you can count on if you still need to have it finish left for you. And I don't think you would have to, unless you really like release this incorrectly and really like encourage it on Annie, you're not going to have to really like worry about it like flipping too far and turning a ton for you. As it beats in, it might turn a little bit more, but just out the gate, I don't think you're going to have to worry about it like turning over at all, or unless you release on a lot of Annie. So I think it'll give you like a confident straight, like it's in the woods, or I need to go straight with a little stability without having to jump up like super far in speed. So again, you can have a little bit more of a controlled, accurate shot.
Come on, Josh, how's it sound, man?
That sounds awesome. Sounds like there's a big hole in my bag and that might fill it. So.
Yeah. And I think, we're the Sphinx, you're like, man, I could hit this really good on a lot of Hyzer, or I want to go into the next fairway. I think this is going to be that like go-to for that shot. Again, you're still going to have the use for the Sphinx. I think that big, like left to right, like floaty turnover, the servo is not going to do that for you. At least not initially, I don't think. So the Sphinx is still going to serve that purpose, but the servo is that nice in between, I think, for you, where you need the Hyzer flip. Maybe you need to give it a little Annie to turn a little bit for you, but still have a controlled shot.
Gotcha. Sounds awesome.
Come on. Well, Josh, would you be willing to come on in a future episode and let us know, hey, here's how it's flying for me?
Definitely. Be interesting to see how much my game's changed in a few more months.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that one for sure. Well, Josh, thanks so much for coming on, man. We'll get this out in the mail to you, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
See ya.
Absolutely. Here we go. Another episode down.
Another one.
We were telling Josh when we were, because behind the scene, we're all about revealing what's behind the curtain here. Yeah. And so we close the episode and then we like actually say goodbye to our guests. Yeah. And so we were telling him, I think this hopefully is a very nostalgic episode for a lot of you, and the moments and connections that you can make of, you remember when discs were just falling around in your bag and you were like, I need a teddy bear to like stuff in my bag just to like hold up the Frisbees and things.
Yeah.
And then also, if you're a newer player and you're in Josh's shoes, you've only been playing for a couple months, you found our podcast and you're like, wow, I don't know if I have this thing figured out. Apply and shoot me a message that you've like, hey, I'm a newer player and things like that. We love helping all sorts of people. That's not me saying like, oh, if you've been playing for 4 years, you're dead. Like you're dead to me. So another question and Brad, I've not asked you this off air, so this will be a fun question to ask on air. Okay. As we continue to evolve the show, we've done some like special things and stuff like that. We will have eventually, like, I feel like we'll have episodes where it's not necessarily recommending a disc. It's more so just slimming bags down kind of a deal.
Right.
Do we think that would be interesting, or like leave it up to the viewers? What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, there may be two types of episodes going forward. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think again, maybe relatability here, maybe folks in like kind of my era of when we started. So like about 3 years in at this point, I think you get to the point where you're like, you've tried a bunch of wrong stuff. You kind of like deconstructed. It went to like some minimalization or like mold minimalization. And then you kind of like, okay, well, my game's improving. I'm starting to see differences in different types of discs and different flight numbers. So then I'm kind of in that spot where I'm like kind of loading my bag up again, and it's making me feel like I need to slim it. And that's why I kind of took all the distance drivers out down to like 10 speeds. So I think that would be very helpful. I mean, even for me, I'm like, there's definitely some overlap that I'm having, and I can probably get away with less discs. I don't think, and then, I think the biggest thing is like shot confusion, like knowing that, okay, I have some similar discs and just making the wrong choice more often than making the right choice. And then really, if you only have that one type of disc in your bag, you don't have to think about it. You can just play. And it's always when I'm just like playing and just like, hey, these couple discs are working for me today. And I just like kind of ignore the rest of my bag. I feel like I play my best disc golf. So I think that could be helpful. Let us know in the comments below. Do you want to see us do multiple types of episodes? Do we want to do like, hey, let's add a disc to your bag? And like, hey, do we do episodes like, hey, let's take away a disc from your bag or something? That might be an interesting concept.
Yeah. And that's like, as we evolve, I mean, thinking about it's crazy to think we've been doing this for over a year, but like when I threw this idea out to Brad initially of, hey, if you went into the PGA Superstore, they would fit you for clubs and things like that. Mm-hmm. And we drew this idea up, and I think eventually you end up talking about like similar slots, similar places over and over again. And there are some that we discovered, like most people have an overstable putt and approach disc figured out. And we noticed that when we did the bag draft of, we've only recommended like one really actual overstable putt and approach disc, which is why Jason had the advantage with having the Toro in his bag. Right. So we see that, but if you're a longtime listener and you've been applying, ideally, you've kind of been taking the advice we've been given and like putting it in your bag. So in theory, like the true deep listeners, you've got most of your like obvious shots covered. So that bag swell that Brad's mentioning would fit a lot of our core audience to get more of our core audience on the show. So yeah, y'all just let us know. Because I want Brad to like that's why I really liked that thing today of like, okay, Brad, what driver would you recommend? Because you've grown as a player and a suggester in doing all of this.
Yeah. And I think we all get in, we all have our own philosophies. Mine right now, and it's based on what I'm personally doing, right? I think we all do that, but I'm like looking at this bag, Josh's bag, and I'm like, I see 13 or 14 and 12 speed. I'm just like, get rid of them. Just like see them later. You know what I mean? But there's use for that sort of stuff. And again, it's just interesting to hear different people's game. And like, again, you said it fitting them to a disc versus like what that disc is supposed to fit.
Totally. And speaking of discs fitting, we, before we dive into the warehouse, we want to remind people a really cool opportunity. If you find yourself in, let's say, a Josh situation that you're newer and you're like, I want to try some more discs, or you are a player that I would say, honestly, you're more like me in terms of people like ask me, someone asked if I was going to do an in the bag in 2023. One of my patrons asked me that. And I was like, honestly, someone pull up and like write out what my 2022 bag was, and they did. And I laid them right next to each other, and like there's like 4 discs that have changed. That's it. And so I'm someone who I found what I like, and I'm not really tempted by anything new in the market. But foundation subscription boxes, super, super cool opportunity for you to try out new discs. You get 3 premium discs, you get a swag item, and usually some other stuff thrown in there for a very affordable price. And it happens every month. The theme changes every month. So for this month, the theme was actually a Robbie C box. So we had a really cool, almost Chick-fil-A-esque inspired, Robbie C life inspired. I'm getting a pig tattoo. We actually have the date on the calendar. Nice. And so Aaron from Flippy did a pig shirt for the Robbie C line, and we're taking the flying pig tattoo, and that's what awesome. We're getting.
That's great.
So I told Aaron, I was like, have you ever had one of your designs like tattooed on someone? And he was like, nope.
That's too funny.
So I'm going to be permanently sponsored by Flippy.
Yeah, there we go.
But it's a pig who got a Robbie C tattoo, which is very fun. And then 2 discs that I absolutely love that I genuinely don't know why more people don't throw them, because they're amazing for beginners, and they're very, very good for experienced players as well. And then the swag item, something near and dear to me. You've always seen my keys hanging around my neck, and we have a Robbie C patch that is the Robbie C key, which is super, super cool. So very stoked for that. Next month's box, we're not going to say what the theme is in its detail, but
it's many months in the making. Many months in the making.
Another special creator is getting highlighted, and that's what we'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm so pumped. And, it's cool because, Robbie, your box, typically we don't do like all the same discs for everybody. We have occasionally, we mix it up from time to time, but we wanted to make sure yours felt like you and like the discs you would really recommend to most people. Because, again, I think what's cool about the 2 discs that were in there other than the pig is I think players of all skill levels can use them, but they're very beginner friendly also. So, and I think, when I'm in the store here, I try to recommend for newer players a disc that will not only be good for them as a beginner, but just like move to different spots in their bag as they progress. And I think literally all of them that we put in your box are like going to be great for people no matter like what stage they're in. And so, like we said in the last episode, and several of you listened, so I appreciate that. Let us know in the your order notes if in the bag, if you heard about the monthly box on in the bag, because those of you who let me know, I went and I actually handpicked your boxes for you, and I wrote you a little note, and I threw in a little extra swag in there from in the bag. And we just want to thank you so much for listening to us and trusting us and signing up. So if you're listening now, the August box is already gone, but we're on to the September one. It's going to be a great box. The value is going to be through the roof. So make sure in the notes, make sure you let us know that in the bag sent you, and we'll be happy to hook you up. I'll go in personally and pick them out for you. So,
dude, and while you're there personally picking them out, what else is new in the warehouse?
Okay, so we got a thought. Yeah, we're good. I mean, we're just good at that. Hey, if you need a professional transition, let us know. Hit us up on in the comments. But yeah, so we have full Thought Space restock, which is great. It's been a minute since we had Thought Space. Even a couple molds we've never carried, like the Temple. Like we've never carried the Temple, so we have that as well. So make sure you check that out. Something I really appreciate about Thought Space, I think their stamps are just so good. All of them look so great. They're very different, and they do everything from like tiny mandala or mandala stamps, however you pronounce that, up to like these big, elaborate, crazy designs. So I really always appreciate Thought Space for that. We also have, speaking of Thought Space, MVP. We have a full MVP restock. So definitely make sure you're going to check that out. Stuff we haven't had in a while, like servos and orbitals. Some of your favorite like neutral to understable stuff is going to go up. We've got every proxy and every plastic imagine, every NV. We have Eclipse hexes. We have glitches. We have blank glitches.
Ooh.
So, I mean, just again,
those are going to be gone.
They're going to be gone. They're probably gone when you're hearing this. I apologize already. They will drop at 5 p.m. So if you're hearing this episode and it's new time slot 7 p.m., you're a little late. Pause, jump over there. Make sure you check out all the new MVP. We've also had some other random things go up. We've had new accessories, new towels, Ripped Revenge deck holders, Ripped Showdown. All that's restocked. We have patches restocked. We have coffee restocked. And there's still a few performance dad hats left. And if you're into those, make sure you check out some new collars. So again, recently restocked is always your best friend. Make sure you're checking out recently restocked. It's the first thing you see on foundationdisc.com. Check that out. And then, until then, make sure you're checking out all the good stuff. Yeah. Make sure you're keeping your bag, and make sure you're tuning in next week. We'll see y'all.
Yeah. See y'all in the next one.